All right, how do you feel?
I feel absolutely insane in the best way. That was such a great workout.
And what was the most challenging part?
The most challenging part was having to recognize the sequence while doing it in a heated room. But at the same time, that was the part that I loved the most because it challenged both my body and my mind. And I feel like I was able to get in line and get in tune with my body in a whole different way.
Welcome to Move, Sweat, Discover. My name is Abby. Welcome back to the pod. Today, I'm super excited to introduce our guest, Luigi Posadas, one of Manila's most sought-after group fitness trainers. He's come all the way from the Philippines just to be on the podcast. Just kidding. He teaches multiple group classes ranging from mat Pilates, indoor cycling, weight training, and running. He loves to train strength, long distance runs, calisthenics, and Pilates. You can find him at Rockwell Athletica, the movement room when it reopens, and at Saddle Row, which is where we met.
Yes.
So welcome to Move, Sweat, Discover. Thank you so much for coming.
Of course,
and
thanks, Abby.
joining me.
Thanks for that intro.
Yeah, it's not over. It's not over. Also, an influencer, I'm going to say, and a model, and maybe a little part-time amateur actor. Can we call you? He's featured in ads and campaigns with Adidas, with Starbucks, and am I correct in saying the Bank of Philippines?
Yes, Bank of the Philippines.
There we go. A very a big variety of brands there you're working with. So congrats. I mean, that's all sounds amazing. How do you feel when you kind of listen to that all back?
Oh my gosh, as you were narrating that introduction just now, which thank you for, by the way, it's still so surreal to me that I've been able to accomplish all of these different things. So it's really great. It's impossible to believe.
Yeah. I mean, just looking through your kind of different like points on your CV with like fitness, I wonder, how has wellness always been a part of your life?
So on the contrary, actually, so I never actually used to be into the whole active lifestyle. So how I started was I used to actually be on the bigger side. So I had a lot of different insecurities growing up. And that was actually the pivot to why I decided to start getting into an active lifestyle to begin with. So although unfortunately, of course, right, like I started working out and getting into dieting, etc., because I had certain dissatisfactions with my body and I was dealing with certain insecurities at the time. But I think wellness has really just changed my mind. I mean, of course, like it will change the way you look, it will change everything else. But more than anything, I think that when I decided to really choose exercise and choose forms of movement that I personally really liked, and I looked at it as more of my body is able to do these certain things, I think it really just improved overall my quality of living.
Yeah. So I mean, take me back like to like your childhood. Were you active then, or was that like not even a thing?
Oh my goodness, I hated moving.
Okay.
I hated jogging, I hated walking, and for the record, how I used to be when I was younger, I would eat about 6 to 7 meals a day.
Oh wow.
Yeah. After eating breakfast, I remember I would have pre-lunch. Then I would have actual lunch. And then in the Philippines, we have this thing called merienda, which is kind of like afternoon snacks or some kind of recess.
Yeah.
So I'd always have a meal for that. And then I'd have my actual dinner afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah. And working out is really something, if a lot of people knew me from back then, working out was something that I hated doing. No, you could never get me to go jogging. You could never get me to play sports. It was out of the picture.
Yeah.
So being here now, it is a huge 180.
Yeah, it's been a journey then.
Yeah, it really has been.
So then what was the switch? You mentioned that obviously, you were dissatisfied with your body image.
No, for sure. I mean, I'm sure it's something that a lot of us who came from the bigger end can relate to. But growing up, I also kind of like experienced forms of bullying because of the way that I looked. So that kind of created those said dissatisfactions, right?
Yeah.
And if there's anything, this entire journey has really been more mental than physical. Because I do believe that if you're able to be consistent with a certain routine or with a certain form of movement, anything is possible physically.
Yeah.
But mentally, being able to stay there for the long term, and more importantly, how you view your relationship with yourself and with your body throughout everything, I think that is what keeps you there in the long term. So when I first started working out, I tried so many different forms of exercise. So I tried jogging, which I didn't like at the time.
Yeah.
I also went through this whole CrossFit phase, and it was just on and off, like I would go from being really active and limiting what I was eating extremely. So I would
Right.
become really skinny. And then because I was so deprived, I would end up eating so much and hating working out. And it was just always a back and forth between the two. Like at one
Battle,
point, I'm
yeah.
so skinny. At the next point, I'm back to the opposite end of the spectrum. And it would kind of just go back and forth. So it was really crazy.
So how did you find your lane then? I mean, you mentioned like a few different like movement modalities there.
Yeah. So for me, what helped me kind of like strike the balance throughout everything was finding movement that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
So the first form of exercise that got me into everything was actually mat Pilates. So that's why I teach it today.
Okay.
Mat Pilates got me so addicted to working out. And from there, when I started doing Pilates, and then eventually I also got into running. So those were my first two actual sports. But when I started taking them seriously, I realized that it wasn't so much anymore about how I looked, but because I enjoyed the feeling of getting stronger, because I started to appreciate how my body could do certain combos tomorrow that I couldn't do the day before.
Yeah.
It was that feeling of achievement that kind of gave me deeper appreciation of what my body can do versus what it looks like. So it kind of became a mindset of where what was more important was how my body felt and how it performed.
Yeah.
And the aesthetic, the weight loss, the muscular building, it kind of became secondary from then on.
Yeah. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into that mindset. Like you've gone from not exercising at all, hating it, eating your pre-lunch.
6 meals a day.
Yeah.
5
So
to
then
6
kind of
meals.
like, kind of having that little bit of motivation with like being bullied and
Yeah.
and then how do you stay on track? How have you stayed on track and kind of even like gone so far as to develop it into career? 'Cause
Yeah,
your story
yeah.
kind of resonates with me in a little sense because as a youngster I was bullied as well for
Oh, I'm so sorry.
being like a little like smaller and skinnier, maybe like a little bit more effeminate, and that was like a huge driver for me to kind of like just prove to these people that I was more than. So then over the years, it's kind of just developed into, like, I love movement. So that is,
Yeah, for sure.
I'm recognized that I'm at my happiest when I'm moving.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to see what like how your journey kind of ended up, that you kind of,
I don't know.
against your
I don't know if
career.
it also helps, but then also because I grew up pretty effeminate also.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty big point
Sure.
of attack for most people also.
Yeah.
Wow, what can I say? There's a lot to unpack there, but I think being able to just stay in this journey for the long term. Well, the first thing I want to say is I think that's what's good about any fitness journey is that it has no deadline.
Correct, yeah.
Right? Like there is no end goal. And even when you do get to a certain goal, you'll always find that there are always ways to elevate yourself. There are always ways to keep on track.
Yeah.
And for me, throughout the years that I've been working out, because how it started was that obviously let's face it, right? Like a lot of us work out because we want to get hot and we want to lose a lot of weight. So that became my one obsessed goal, that I
Okay.
had to look a certain way, that I wanted a six pack, that I wanted to have nice shoulders.
Yeah.
I wanted to, just like you, bulk up and be more muscular and kind of like defeat all of the external allegations, right?
Yeah.
But then later on, when I did start losing weight and when I started to see some muscle definition, I kind of felt that I don't know why I still wasn't really happy with myself, that even if I started developing like certain muscles and I started losing some of the pounds,
Yeah.
it made me realize that although it's good to have these goals, what will keep you long term and in it for the long haul is when you have a more sustainable goal. So that being said, especially these days, I work out really more because it's good for my mental health because it makes me feel good about myself. Similarly to you, I just feel happy when I move. Ties in with how if you have the right workouts and the right exercises and you find movement that makes you feel good, you'll want to keep doing it, not just because you want to lose your 5 pounds, but it's because that is what makes you feel good about yourself. And when you are able to feel good about yourself, you can become a better person for other people as well. So honestly, I'm just really lucky that I was able to find different forms of movement that I feel very passionate about. How it got this far in terms of my career.
Because you're not like, this isn't your full-time, I know I've said influencer model, like sounds very glamorous to everyone, but you're in advertising, right?
I also do work in advertising. I do have a corporate life as well. For one, I'm really grateful because, of course, where I work, my different corporate jobs allow for me to make time for this. But at the same time, I think what also kind of like helped me teach all these different classes and work with all these different brands is that once upon a time in the pandemic, I decided to put myself out there in the open. So growing up, I told you that I was an insecure, I was on the bigger end and I was very insecure growing up. But one day when I decided to just really put myself out there, because I used to be very shy about my progress, especially coming from my background. So I never wanted to post myself. I didn't talk to a lot of people about how I was feeling. Even when I started at the gym, I didn't really record myself a lot. But then one day in the pandemic, when I decided to start studying to get certifications and to get my Pilates cert as well, I decided that nothing happens if you just choose to always stay in the dark. And I felt at the time that I had a lot to share. I felt like I had a lot of different, apart from fitness tips, right? I feel like I had a lot of insights, a lot of things that I wanted to say. And that is the core of why I even get into group fitness to begin with. So I thought to myself, like it's scary to put yourself out there. You don't know how people are going to perceive you. You don't know how people are going to perceive your classes and the craft that you bring to the table. But at the same time, I told myself that I will never know how far I can go if I don't try to put myself out there. So in the pandemic, I decided to start doing freelance and independent Zoom classes. So I used to brand myself as hashtag Pilates, Pop Pilates with Posadas, because it's all P. And at the time it was fun but quite challenging because I was my own team, so I had to market myself. I had to operate the Zoom by myself. I had to post for myself on Instagram. So it was tough at first, but then I told myself I just have to keep going no matter what the challenges are. If I just keep going, then you'll never know what you could achieve.
And that's the only way you can grow, right?
Exactly.
So you went from your advertising career to fitness trainer extraordinaire. Talk to me about that journey.
For me, although I'm still working my advertising job now, which I'm very grateful for also, admittedly, it is a little difficult to balance a corporate life as well as, especially now, I feel like I pursue so many different things in fitness, from the classes and to working with brands, etc. But I think it's always just about setting your priorities straight and having really good time management. So I'm very lucky that my job allows me to work remotely. But at the same time, I think it's also a matter of knowing like which days you really have to put your foot down on certain things, when to prioritize work, or knowing like what seasons of your job are a little more flexible that would allow me to teach more, for example. And being able to just like manage everything, it just requires a lot of really good compartmentalization.
So did you have like, you were in your kind of corporate life, and you were exercising on the side. What made you want to turn that into like a side hustle?
Which one? The fitness? So when I started working out, I think it's also because it translated from when I was still a student. Because I started exercising when I was still in college. And that was also the time that I really started developing the love for exercise and for movement and all of that. So I think because I started very young, I'd like to say very young, but because I started when I was still a student, I think my brain and my schedule already learned how to accommodate having two separate lives. So I kind of knew how to balance my studies together with my classes. And then when I started working, the pandemic happened. So I only started working very recently and also graduated just very recently. But because I guess we were all at home during the pandemic, that also kind of allowed for me to figure out how it looks like during the day with regard to my corporate life and when or where are the buckets where I could put in a class or sneak in a social media post. So because I had been doing it since I was a student, I think I kind of just got used to really having two lives at the same time. And I'm very grateful for it too.
When I was in Manila recently, which is when we met, what I noticed is that actually a lot of the trainers there are like yourself. They're like Superman and Clark Kent. Like they have their corporate life, and then they are, they whip it off and they teach a group class. Like, how do you find the fitness community in Manila, and also having kind of experienced stuff within Hong Kong and the rest of Asia? Like, how do you find the nuances there?
Oh, that's such a great question. It's so perfect because I think the fitness scene is massively growing right now compared to the previous years. I don't know if it's because we had just come from a global pandemic. So maybe people are really craving to go out and everybody's really looking to exercise now. Because you know how also during the pandemic, people were just at home and nobody was really paying attention to their weight and to the different exercise that they do. So especially recently, I've been to Hong Kong and then I've been traveling also to like Singapore and other different Asian countries where boutique fitness studios are everywhere, right? You've got all these different hybrid classes. You've got like a combination of spin and run. You've got rowing. You've got like Pilates is everywhere now. So I think the Philippines is heavily adopting to that. And I'm really excited, especially being an instructor myself. It's fun because it's also fun to think about what are the different new formats that I could teach, right? So I'm excited to see how it will all unfold.
I found the community there super inclusive. More so than, dare I say it, Hong Kong.
Really?
Yeah, everyone was super welcoming. It was just a breath of fresh air, I would say, and you're part of that.
Thank you.
It's a testament to your teaching skills. Let's kind of cycle back a little bit. Let's dive in and talk about your weight loss journey. What were your kind of biggest takeaways over the course of that time?
Wow, that is a tough question. Takeaways from my weight loss journey. I think number one, which I would really recommend to everybody or anyone watching the podcast, really, weight loss. Number one, you need to find movement that you actually can stick to long term. So again, I'm really lucky that I found that in Pilates and running, and then later on strength training. Second is I think everybody who's trying to lose weight should engage in strength training. Group classes and cardio are really great. Don't get me wrong, I love them also. But if you really want to seriously build your engine, right, and then you dive into the whole body recomposition and all of that. But I think generally it's always good to engage in the basic movements like the push, the pull, the twist, the hinge, etc. Because those movements, if you know how to do them and you do have some level of strength in all those basic foundational movements, you can translate them to all the different exercises that you do. And even if you're not working out for a period of time, because you do have a certain muscular foundation, that kind of keeps you there for the long term. Third thing is, I think it's super important to always be consistent and to track. So obviously a lot of us get into different types of diets. Some people like myself prefer to calorie count just because I have absolutely no control over my eating. If I'm not counting my calories, I could eat 10K calories today. So I think it's really important to track your progress, both with how much we're eating, and second would be progress at the gym, for example. So how much you are lifting, to have a good basic program and to just keep increasing and tracking your progress there. And I think my last takeaway is to really not rush anything, because I mean, my journey took me 8-9 years. It's a really long time because I started when I was a student. And for example, like people who are coming from a background similar to mine, where we start working out because we have a certain dissatisfaction with our bodies, right? And for me, I had to go from big to small to big to small again. Mentally, especially, it really takes time to come into terms with yourself.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
even if you're not really mentally at that stage where you're just loving movement, because admittedly, not everybody gets there overnight, it takes a while for you to get into the headspace where you're really ready to lose weight. And the thing is, I only started seeing real results with my body when I started taking things seriously because I was fueling my body with love rather than hatred. There is a huge difference between saying, I hate the way I look, that's why I need to lose 10 pounds, versus saying, my body deserves better, I love doing this, I love doing that, and that's why I'm losing 10 pounds.
Yeah.
So those are two very different things. And I think mentally being able to switch from the hatred to the more positive side of things, that really takes time.
Yeah.
Because I've seen people who lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks or maybe less than a month. But then later on, because it was coming from a place that wasn't serving their body, they end up going back, right?
Yeah.
So I think people who are trying to lose weight really have to take their time. I mean, it took me 8 to 9 years. Admittedly, there are some other influencers who are able to do it in a year or two, but you know, everyone's journey is different.
Yeah.
And it's completely okay to just find yourself, to find what works for you, because
Yeah.
these things really take time.
It's all relatively about balance.
Yeah, for sure.
It's all about that. I mean, I feel like we talked off mic about this yesterday. Like, I used to track my macros and count my calories a lot. But I found that ultimately, for me, in the end, like it just gave me a really unhealthy relationship with food.
For sure.
And that's not to say that it doesn't work, because you know, like there's so many body transformation gyms, and it works for some people. But I had to kind of put it to the side because I became obsessed with it, and you know, I would like shun certain types of foods and certain types of you know. Because I thought, oh, this is not good for me.
Yeah.
In fact, I, you know.
Yeah. So before, I also kind of like used to have a similar tendency because I started off with calorie counting, right? Currently, I'm kind of very flexible with the way I count my calories.
Yeah.
Flexible in the sense that I don't beat myself up, let's say, if I went over my calories today.
Yeah.
But even to get to this more or less stable state, it also does take a while. So I think the first step is, if you are going to like seriously start your fitness journey, you also have to accept that you are not going to be cutting out certain things for good.
Sure.
And it's always about finding balance. It's always about choosing when. It's always about finding what's good for you, right? So it's all those different things.
I often find that like if I want to eat like a piece of cake or a packet of potato chips, I'll eat it.
Yeah.
And like my most important thing is that I don't feel guilty about it.
For sure. One thing that I kind of like talked a lot about. So before, when I started to put myself out there on social media, I was very vocal about my views on fitness and about eating, etc. And at least for me, in the first few years of my fitness journey, what ruled over my mind and why I was working out was always my relationship with food.
Yeah.
So the reason why I also wanted to put myself out there, and the message that I kind of want to convey, is that via my classes, for example, or fitness in general, it should always be about improving your relationship with how you see yourself, your relationship with food. Because at the end of the day, you can't just say, I can't eat this because this is bad food, because there's no such thing as bad and good food, right? Like cake, for example, it's still a carb at the end of the day, and carbs fuel you, right? I mean,
they should write that on the packet of Dunkin' Donuts.
But it's exactly that. People end up leaving their fitness journeys because they think they have to cut things out completely.
Yeah.
And when we label food as bad or good, that is what makes us hate the journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So it's always about giving yourself a little piece of good stuff every so often.
That's why I asked a question towards the end of the podcast to all of my guests that a lot of people say, what's your cheat meal? And I'm like, no, it's not about cheating. I say, what's my treat meal? Treat, not cheat. Because like, again, it's like changing the mindset and changing the language
I
around
totally agree with
that.
you. I don't even have cheat meals. I never had one ever. I have literally
You've been treating yourself from day one.
I have never had a cheat meal since the day I started working out. And until today, I just eat whatever I like. But in moderation, of course.
Yeah.
No such thing as cheat meals.
Let's talk about putting yourself out there. What is your relationship like with social media then?
Wow, that is such a tough question.
I mean, it's also really relevant. You know, like
It is so relevant.
I
Yeah.
ask this question a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
to
yeah.
my guests because
It is
you know
so relevant.
we all, in some sense, are putting ourselves out there, and it's always
Yeah,
the
yeah.
edited, curated, best
Yeah.
looking side to ourselves, right?
Gosh, I think, to be completely honest, I don't think I have the best relationship with social media right now.
Okay. In what way?
So when I started putting myself out there as like a coach and instructor,
Yeah.
so at the time I didn't have any studios with me at all. Again,
Sure.
I was an independent freelance instructor, right?
Yeah.
Who was just doing his own Zoom classes, hoping people would take them.
Yeah,
But the scene during the time, this was 2020, so TikTok was just starting. So I mean, versus now in 2025, where the influencer space is so saturated already, right? And now content is so competitive.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not the best at it anymore. I don't think I was ever the best, but I feel like I'm even less good at it now. But
It's tough. It's tough.
yeah, I think my challenge with social media currently is exactly like what you said, having to succumb to the pressure of looking and speaking a certain way. I think it's great, both a blessing and a curse, to have a following, because you have a lot of eyes on you, right? And with a lot of people viewing your content and viewing your page, that also means you have to be more responsible with how you
Sure.
act, right? So currently for me, it's trying to find the balance between not caring and being my most authentic self versus at the same time, I mean, let's face it, at the end of the day, we are still fitness professionals, right? So we kind of try to look and act a certain way on social media, and considering the fact that there are so many other like characters in the space. So I think now what I'm trying to do, at least when I post and when I'm on social media, is to kind of just focus on being authentic.
Yeah.
So whatever it is that I want to say, whatever it is I want to post, sometimes I get scared to post, let's say, certain reels or
Okay.
posts, because I'm worried that, okay, what if, especially now, right? Like KOLs are so defined by our statistics, like our
Yeah.
engagement, our following. So sometimes I worry that, oh, if I post this, will it get good engagement, or will get a lot of views, right?
Yeah.
But I try to tell myself that, you know what, if this piece of content resonates with me and I had fun creating it and editing it, I will just post it.
Yeah.
The engagement will follow, because at the end of the day, it is still our page after all, and we
Yeah.
should be able to post what we like.
Do you find yourself on social media a lot?
Yeah, it's difficult to. I mean, technically, it is work, right? So,
I say that.
like having to post stories, posting your class schedule,
Yeah.
marketing yourself as an instructor and as
Yeah.
a KOL, it's technically work. So we can never really get off social media.
Yeah.
But because of that, admittedly, I am scrolling way too often on my phone. And maybe
yeah,
there's
yeah.
merit to putting it down and just living in the moment, being present.
Yeah, I have recently started to try and implement like the time limitation.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah, I started it like a while, like years ago, and then I kind of just like it fell off. But recently, I found myself having to do it because, you know, again, I asked about social media. I find it it's like the best in terms of like we have our own voices. You can market
Yeah.
yourself however you want to. / it's the worst because then it comes with a whole barrage of like comparing yourself to other people.
For sure.
And
I think that's another thing I
Yeah.
wanted to touch on a little bit. Just because everybody obviously has their own social media accounts, right? Sorry. I think we all have to be very careful about what we pay attention to online,
Absolutely,
because
yeah.
content is so accessible by everybody around.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes, and I mean, just like how we also think about how much we need to curate on social media, there are
Yeah.
people who are really curating themselves. So this was actually like an issue that I had to face internally during the pandemic, since even then I was more so on Instagram versus now. But there is danger in looking at other people's progress
Yeah.
And just taking it for what it is, because at the same time, nobody posts their bad days, you know.
No.
I will not post shirtless when I'm bloated, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like sometimes we might fall into that rabbit hole and think, oh, this person looks so perfect, but at the end of the day, it's always a mix of how we angled ourselves, the lighting in which we posted that photo.
Yeah.
Maybe we didn't eat a lot the day before. So I think it pays to be very careful about what you see and to not take everything as is. One of the quotes that I really love, which I also learned from Cassie Ho, who taught me how to do mat Pilates, is that someone's chapter 5 is not your chapter 1.
Sure.
So just because somebody is posting something and offhand it looks so good, but then you can't compare yourself, because comparison is the thief of joy, and their progress is different from yours. It's never apples to apples. So you should never compare.
Yeah. It's difficult.
Yeah, it is.
It is difficult. I want to talk about being a man in the Pilates space, which some might assume is kind of like a pretty feminine, like dominated kind of arena. How do you feel about that?
I get it. I understand why. But if anything, that was exactly why I started Pilates to begin with. So I mentioned that in my fitness journey, Pilates was what opened the gates for me to stay in the fitness scene long time, right? But that's actually the thing. Why I ended up falling in love with Pilates was because from afar, it looked so easy. So how it started was I had a best friend who sent me this YouTube link to a 5-minute arms Pilates on the mat workout. And then I saw it and I was like, what the heck? Like, this is so not going to give me nice arms. But when I tried it, it was very humbling. It was a very, very difficult routine that I wasn't even able to sustain for 2 minutes, which I think is everyone's experience with Pilates, right? So that made me realize that, okay, like I'm a male and I did this YouTube video, but it was super hard. And that was what inspired me to keep doing Pilates, because I wanted to get really good at it. Because from afar, it looks so easy. But then when you do it, it is so difficult. So I don't know, in the Pilates space, at least, like we all make these jokes that, you know, when you drag your boyfriend or when you drag the straight man into Pilates, they can't do it.
It reminds me of those reels where it's like a room full of like really big rugby guys doing like a Pilates class.
Like people who lift 100 kilos on squats, they can't do those pulses for a long time, you know? But I think it's cool though, because at least from what I'm noticing in my direct circle in the Philippines, regardless of gender, at least from what I'm sensing and what I'm hearing, people are starting to become very, not even just accepting, people are really getting into Pilates. So right now, it is such a sought after workout. So I think we're slowly veering away from Pilates being a mostly female dominated space, which is really awesome.
Do you find it important to break the stigma around that?
Of course, definitely. I super think so. I think every exercise has its own set of benefits for regardless of gender, right? Like even if you look at the science of things, like when you look at strength training versus, let's say, with Pilates works on a lot of the smaller muscles that you don't usually use at the gym. And then with the gym, you work on a lot of different compound and bigger muscle groups that you don't work in Pilates. So at this point, it starts to become very gender neutral, and it starts to become a matter of more of what your goals are, how much do you want to get stronger, where do you want to get stronger. So that now becomes the deciding factor of which exercise to invest in. So I don't think it should be a matter of, oh, this exercise is feminine or this is too masculine. It's more of everything is just hard. And you just got to choose where it is and how you want to get stronger.
So that kind of brings me to my next question, which is quite fitting. How does your body feel today after our sweat session yesterday?
Oh my gosh, you guys, my glutes and my core were so sore this morning.
Okay, good.
Genuinely, I thought I couldn't get up from my bed. I took like a full 8-9 hours sleep last night, which I don't normally do because I get only usually 5 to 6 hours on average daily. But then even with 8 to 9, I was just so tired. When I woke up, I was like, oh my God, like I had not, well, also because because I had not done family form like ever. But when I woke up this morning, then I got up from bed, I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, I haven't felt this much soreness in a while, so it was crazy.
So to give everyone a bit of context, yesterday, I put Luigi through his paces. He did one of my family form classes. So family form, again, for a little bit of context, is a heated sculpts class. So it's a hot room, infrared heaters. It's mat based. We wear ankle weights. Sometimes we have optional hand weights. Yeah.
It was insane. And to think I didn't even use the heaviest ankle weights. I used the normal one. And it was crazy. Like the glutes, the core.
Yeah.
Everything was just on fire.
So yesterday wasn't the first time technically it wasn't the first time we worked out together.
No, definitely
the first time
not,
was in Manila at your class in Saddle Row. Which,
right. Yeah.
I'm just gonna give it a little bit of a shout out there. Anyone that's in Manila, go to Saddle Row because the classes are amazing. I am not like typically, I don't love rowing.
Yeah.
But I was just very intrigued by, I love boutique fitness and I love going to different classes whenever I travel. So I was intrigued by the rower that you have with the water. And I was like, how do they fill a class for 45, 50 minutes or an hour, however long it is, with just rowing? Yeah. But yeah, it was a great class. So that was the first time we met and the first time we worked out together.
Yeah.
So the class is timed to music relatively.
Yeah.
What was what did you learn about me? Like this whole podcast is based around like the idea that you can learn a lot about someone when you're sweating with them, and also obviously yourself.
Yeah. Well, for the record though, both from when you took my class and even yesterday when I took your class, I'm a strong believer that when two people are together in a room working out or in a group class, you kind of like there's an energy exchange. Right? I mean, even as an instructor, you always have a certain energy exchange with the class and with each individual. I don't know if this is anything, but when Avi took my class in rowing, he didn't have a hard time at all. Like didn't break a sweat, face was just straight the whole time. So I was like, oh my goodness, I think my routine was just so easy. But if anything though, from that point, I already kind of like felt the passion for movement. I don't know why. Like you kind of just feel it, right?
Yeah.
I felt that there was a very genuine and warm energy there.
Yeah.
And that's why when you told me yesterday that you just really enjoy moving and that you're not into like counting and tracking numbers, for example, I wasn't exactly surprised.
Okay.
Although we didn't get to talk that much during the time when you took my class in Saddle Row, I kind of just had an idea already based on how you moved, your aura, your energies, and like us being in the class together. That okay, this guy is a creature of movement. Like I could just feel it.
Yeah.
And more so when I took the class yesterday, I think especially because it was an intimate class, right?
Yeah.
So being your student this time, now that the tables had turned, I think that also gave me a deeper appreciation, especially of your craft, and you being an instructor. Especially because as a student, you're able to feel the genuine energy of your instructor. That being said, you can also tell when your instructor is not exactly into it, right?
Yeah.
But from the energy inside our room from start all the way to even post class, I think what I learned and appreciated most about you especially was that genuine love for movement and that genuine intent to really make sure that your students, whether you know them or not, really feel that. So I think that was something that I felt yesterday.
Great. Thank you.
Miss Universe, by the way.
That was a very manicured answer.
Very honest answer, though.
Yeah. What did you learn about yourself yesterday during the workout?
Okay, easy. That I have a lot to work on.
I mean, it's a unique workout. It's not for everybody.
No.
Sadly, sometimes I invite friends, or sometimes and they're like, "Oh, well, never coming back." But it's a challenge, and it's more about like your mind than your body.
Yeah.
So,
what I liked about the exercise was that it had a lot of different elements of mat Pilates, which is something that's obviously not new to me, right? Like any Pilates exercises on the mat are kind of like second nature to me already. But the reason why I said I learned that I had a lot to work on is because in despite of my background with bodyweight exercises and Pilates, it was still very, very challenging, obviously. I mean, my soreness this morning speaks for itself. But being able to combine a lot of different movements, both from the yoga and Pilates space, and put them into a sequence. what I liked is that it felt like a dance, but at the same time, I mean, I teach a lot of different workouts and
Yeah.
exercises, and I myself train so many different formats. So I think what I liked most about it was that it made me realize that there's still so much more out there. That there are exercises that I'm not yet used to. There are things that I'm not that good at. And there's lots of like ways for me to still improve. Like yesterday, there's a lot of coordination,
Yeah.
like musicality, catching the beat with the weights on. It posed an entire new set of challenges to me as someone who is already, I'd like to think, generally fit.
Yeah.
So that was what I like, that it kind of opened me up that there's still a lot more out there to learn and there's still a lot more out there to do. Yeah.
How often do you teach classes?
I teach maybe 9 to 15 classes a week.
That used to be me when I was in my 20s. I ask because I want to ask more, like, do you learn something about yourself each time that you teach?
Yeah, I actually do. I think just because the nature of a group class setting is you're exposed to different people every single time, right? And that being said, and for me, I teach so many different formats.
Yeah.
So there's always an opportunity to grow with every new format that I teach. Like before, I started off with just Pilates, and then I started to get into the running and the strength, and then later on rowing and cycling. So I think with every class, I learn a lot from my students, the same way that students learn more from me.
Yeah.
Because you know how offhand you'd think that students learn more from the instructor. But for me, I believe that the instructor is actually secondary and students are primary.
That's great.
So it's not the instructor who makes the class, it's the students who make the class.
Yeah.
And the instructor actually learns more from the students. Like for me, I learn more about how to deal with people better. I learn about the different personalities that come to class every single day. And those different factors in each class continuously shape how I view my classes, how I want to keep improving. Like maybe at the start, I always want a super intense and super hard class.
Yeah.
And then you meet a bunch of people and it's like, sometimes they just want to have fun. And it's like me as an
Yeah.
instructor, like I don't have to make this 11 over 10 hard class all the time,
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just about creating a workout that will make your students feel good. Because at the end of the day, the students aren't always there to die. Sometimes they're just there because they need to get their mind off of a rough work day.
Yeah.
Maybe they just needed a 45-minute pick-me-up from a hard convo that they had prior. So those are the different things that kind of like shape the way that I instruct from one class to the other.
Yeah. It's almost like therapy.
Yeah, definitely. And us as instructors, I feel like we have to be there for our students, because at the end of the day, it's not about us. It's always about the students and how we want to make our classes good for them.
Yeah. I feel like what I noticed about you during the class yesterday, and to a certain extent,
My bad performance.
no. And to a certain extent, the first class at Saddle Row,
Okay.
was that you showed quite a few points during the class. You showed like some enthusiasm, and I wasn't sure if that was because of the playlist, the Ariana Grande, or but my takeaway from that time was that like you have, again, similar, like you have great energy and you're in the movement, you're appreciating, like the stretch of the arm, you're appreciating like you're connecting your mind to your body during that whole 55 minutes or whatever. And that's very motivating to you. And that you strive for the best or like the furthest kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Would you say that's accurate?
It is very accurate because even with my own personal workouts, which is something that I want to translate to the group setting because I deal with more people, right? I learned that listening to your body throughout every movement, and most importantly, moving with intention. I think that is the most important thing. Like at the gym, for example, I would very much rather lift, let's say, 75% of my typical weight. But I'm really taking my time. I'm really focusing on depth. I'm focusing on my breathing because you want to move and make each rep count, right? Versus like you're rushing your reps and you're lifting super heavy just for the sake of getting it done. So I think that's also a concept that I want to translate into the group class. that when you move, you don't always have to be going at your hardest. What matters is moving the way that makes you feel good
Yeah.
and being able to focus on every rep as if it's your last one. So you want to focus, at least I would want my students to focus on quality of the rep, really being present with your rep. So whether you're just stretching, whether you're just doing your warm up before the actual class, every movement in there matters. So it's
Yeah.
important to be that present with it.
Yeah. How do you, just on a personal level, how do you make space for yourself? Because you mentioned you have your, your corporate job, you have your side hustles with the fitness, you
Yeah.
part-time influence and act in comedy reels. um, how do
Healing
you
comedy.
how do you make time for you? Because also at the end of the day, sometimes like I say like, oh, like moving is my time for me.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'm just like teaching.
Yeah.
So I sometimes will need to create moments in my schedule that make me happy. So I will schedule like 5 minutes of like watching a YouTube video and then I go back to work, or like 20 minutes I go for like a walk outside kind of thing.
That's right. I think for me, how I do that, I purposely schedule like my own personal workout times. So
Yeah.
what a lot of people find peculiar about me, which I started doing over the pandemic, is that I would wake up at 5 a.m. 4 times a week so that I could do my own workout before the day begins.
Yeah.
Although waking up at 5 is really not for everybody, I have to admit, but I think what I love about that time slot is that the world is still so quiet.
Yeah.
The sun's not yet up. And when I work out at 5 a.m., I feel like it is really my time. And similar to you, I'm sure we feel the same, but when we're able to move or work out for ourselves, that's a time for us to really assess. It's our me time, right? It's self-care. So that being said, when I'm able to have that self-care very early in the morning, when the day starts at 8 or 9 a.m. and everything starts to flow, at least I know more or less my cup is filled. So I'm able to take the day and the rest of the week a lot better. Yeah.
Actually, your class at Saddle Row was my me time. Because I was like spending 2-3 hours moving for a family farm in Manila. But I kind of considered that work. So
congratulations,
All right. We are going to end our time with a go-to round.
Oh, the best.
So just like, don't think too much about, like your answers, just like quick lightning round type of situation. All right.
The pressure is on.
No. We'll start with an easy one.
Suddenly got hot in here.
We'll start with an easy one. Go to sweat.
Weightlifting.
Okay, good. Go to treat meal.
Iced coffee.
Okay. Oat milk latte.
Oat milk latte all over my body.
Go to stress reliever.
Weightlifting.
Okay. Starting to get to know you a little bit more. Go to travel destination.
Hong Kong.
Oh yeah. Go to morning routine.
Weightlifting and Pilates.
Okay. Go to weekend activity. Don't say weightlifting.
Okay, so that the answer is different. I will say having brunch out.
Okay. Go to music playlist.
Ariana Grande and Dua Lipa. So there's two of them.
Okay.
Literally, my playlists are literally just the two of them. No one else.
Go to outdoor activity.
Trail running.
Have you done a marathon before?
No, but the thing is, I used to be a very addicted runner once upon a time. Back when run clubs weren't a thing yet. Yeah. So I used to run a lot from 2016 up to 2019. So I used to wake up on random days and say, hey, I'm going to run 21K today. Then I just run 21K. Yeah. So I never really joined races, but because I was so addicted to running, I was just running random distances all the time.
Run clubs are huge.
They are.
And I noticed a lot of them in the BGC area, Manila.
Everywhere. They are everywhere.
Yeah. They would just like meet up outside Krispy Kreme. It's like...
Are there a lot in Hong Kong though?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess it's a worldwide thing.
Yeah. I feel like post-pandemic, people just want to get out and like...
Yeah, for sure.
Go to book.
I don't read books.
Go-to app.
Instagram, sadly.
Okay. There's nothing sad about that. Go to go to self-care ritual.
Working out. Weightlifting and Pilates again.
Luigi, what is next for you?
Well, I want to keep teaching, that's for sure. I'm a firm believer. Well, I'm the type of person who never really has like a solid plan.
Yeah.
It's more of I just want to keep going with the things that give me inspiration.
Yeah.
And with every opportunity that opens itself up to me along the way, I never want to say no to any of them. So
Sure.
for as long as I can keep exploring different avenues to express myself in the fitness space, I will keep going and do just that.
Yeah. Are you wanting do you have any kind of dreams or goals to like open your own studio or
One goal that I
Great.
developed literally just in this recent Hong Kong trip is to hopefully work with Lululemon one day.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
maybe. But of course, long term also, I would want to
Yeah.
own something, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is yet.
Sure.
It could be a clothing line, could be a studio, maybe a regular gym. But eventually, who knows, right? Who knows
Yeah.
where the wind will blow?
Do you have an entrepreneurial spirit?
In a way, I guess. Like when I started doing the Pilates classes online, I think that was my first taste of having a very small business
Yeah.
because I had to obviously invest money into the certs and the Zoom and all
Yeah.
of that and kind of just like sell myself online. So who knows how that could manifest into a bigger space later on.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like you do to me, like having
Wow, thank you.
having put yourself out there, you know, like deciding to put yourself out there on,
Yeah.
on your socials.
Yeah.
You've got a great energy, and I think that like you definitely come across as a very kind of creative
Definitely.
person. So
I think I'm a little too whack.
I'm excited to see where this takes you.
Yeah, thanks for having me
yeah.
also. It was so awesome to meet you in Saddle Row.
Yeah, where can people find you on socials?
You can find me at Luigi Posadas on Instagram only. I tried to get into TikTok, but I think I'm a little too tired for that.
It's a lot, isn't it?
I also feel like I'm not at that age gap anymore to do TikToks and dance in front of the camera. So yeah, see you guys on Instagram.
All right, there you go. Thank you so much, Luigi,
Thank
for
you
your
so
time.
much.
It was
Thank
a
you
pleasure.
for having me. It's so great chatting today.
Awesome. See you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Move, Sweat, Discover. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.